So if you've decided you're eating too much garbage and you want to eat a little bit better, maybe you watched our video on the effects of eating ultra-processed foods on our body and you're like, holy mackerel, I really should be eating a little bit better. Well, taking those steps can be a little bit intimidating, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So in this video, I'm going to help you understand how to transition into eating more real foods. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So if you're eating a chocolate chip muffin while you're watching this, know that this is going to take some work. Some significant changes are going to have to take place, and it's going to take effort to make those changes take place. Just keep in mind that if you're dealing with any type of health issue at all, this is going to be at least a part of correcting that. A lot of people just want to fix things with supplements, or I'm just going to work out harder. But when clients come to me and they pay me a lot of money, I don't pull any punches. I explain, look, you're not going to fix this problem the way that you're eating. If you're having ding-dongs and protein bars that are marketed as healthy, but it's really just processed candy when you're eating that stuff, you're not going to correct those things. So to change how the body is working, you're going to have to change what you're putting into the body. You can't eat like an 8th grader and think that you're going to fix your health issues. I'm not a leprechaun. You're going to have to put on your big boy pants and put some effort into making some real changes. But when it comes time to do that, know that you don't have to have everything changed by Thursday. You don't have a swimsuit magazine cover shoot that you're doing this week that you have to get ready for. You don't have to have everything right this week. So give yourself a break, let yourself make some adjustments and work into this. So one of the most helpful things that you can do when you're going to try to make this transition is to understand why you're making this transition. Understand your goals. So the first thing that you want to be looking at is that you're trying to get more nutrient-dense foods. Real food, and when I say real food, some people might say, oh, you want to eat a whole foods diet. That's really what we're talking about. I just like to say real food. When you say Whole Foods, people think I got to shop at Whole Foods. That's not what it is. You just want to have real food. Real food is something that came from an animal, or it grew out of the ground, or it fell out of a tree that the animal was peeing on. It came from nature. It was not created in a laboratory by some scientist who was trying to buy a speedboat. It came from the world. So that's what we want to eat. We want to eat real food. And those are the foods that have more nutrients in them. Now, our despicable farming methods have kind of degraded that a little bit, where a lot of the commercially grown produce now does not have the nutrients that it did 50 years ago, just because of the way that we're destroying our soil. Those nutrients come from the soil, and when people are just pounding pesticides and not really taking care of that soil, the produce that comes out of there is not as nutrient dense. Still, it's going to have more nutrients than a Hubba Bubba candy bar or whatever it is that you're getting from the vending machine, because it's real food. So we're trying to increase the nutrient density of the food that we're consuming, because a lot of health issues, a lot of symptoms have to do with the body not having the nutrients and the minerals and the resources that it needs just to function correctly. A lot of times we view this as like, oh man, this was just the genetics I was giving. But a lot of times the body's just not getting what it needs, either because the person's not eating the right type of food, or because they can't break it down and get all the nutrients out of that. So what we're trying to do is increase the nutrients that the body is receiving so it can work the right way. And another thing that we're doing is we're trying to remove toxins from what we're shoving into our gullet. A lot of these ultra-processed foods have a lot of chemicals, a lot of dyes, a lot of flavorings, a lot of things that the body does not recognize as food. Anything that comes into the body that the body doesn't recognize as something it can use is a burden to the body. It's a toxin to the body. The body now has to figure out, how do I get rid of this? How do I deal with this toxin? So what we're looking at when we're trying to eat better food is this can be a twofold situation. We're trying to bring in more nutrients, but we're also trying to reduce the number of nutrients and resources that the body has to utilize towards dealing with the toxins that you're putting in your body. So when we eat these things and we don't die, we think that they're fine. But just because something is toxic doesn't mean it's going to kill you on the spot. It's still giving the body a burden that it has to figure out how to deal with. The body is designed to deal with burdens, but can it really deal with that many? It kind of depends on what you have going on. That's why some people do fine eating a bunch of junk and some people have a hard time getting out of bed. Your body is no longer able to compensate for the level of toxins that are coming in. So we want to reduce this burden. So when we understand that that's our goal, it makes it a little bit easier to put the effort in that it's going to take to eat better. Okay? Another thing that we're looking to do is to boost our digestion, because when we can digest the foods that we're eating better, then we can get more of the nutrients in those foods and give those to the body. A lot of people are eating great, but they can't digest the food well enough to get those nutrients. And if you can't get the nutrients, you might as well not be putting all the effort into eating those better foods. You're not getting the benefits. So one thing we want to think about is that in order for digestion to work correctly, it needs nutrients and minerals. And so for the body to make hydrochloric acid or stomach acid so that it can break your food down and get the nutrients out of that food, your body needs minerals and nutrients to do that. So if you're just eating all of this junk that doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it, the body doesn't have what it needs to really digest your food correctly. So that's an aspect that can really increase and improve when we start to eat better foods. Also, a lot of these processed junk foods have a lot of wheat and grains and all these kind of things in it that have the ability to block specific aspects of our digestive process, like our bile. So I talked about that a lot in that other video about what ultra-processed foods are doing to our body. I'll put the link in that video in the description below this video. If you've not seen that, you'll really want to check that out and understand a lot of the harm that those processed foods can do to our digestive system. But when we're making better food choices to boost our ability to digest our food, that's another level that we're able to help the body. This also boosts our ability to assimilate nutrients. That means that we can access the nutrients and actually utilize them. So we're doing a lot of steps here already. We're bringing in more nutrients, but we're also helping the body access those nutrients so that they can be utilized a little bit better. So for a lot of people, that's what it's about. It's about access to those nutrients. When you start to remove some of these burdens that are coming in with all these ultra-processed foods, you really help the body access these nutrients better. All these foods are also going to help improve your gut flora. When you're eating a wider variety of real foods, then you're bringing in a lot more micronutrients that maybe the body may not be able to access. When we look at processed foods and we're like, oh, this is fortified with vitamin C, and they're just putting synthetic vitamins and things in there. When you eat a food, there's a lot of cofactors that go into those foods that bring nutrients in that your body's not going to access from something that is fortified with vitamins and minerals. You really want to get the real food, and when we're giving the body those real things, that improves that gut flora or our beneficial bacteria in our large intestine that really help us break some foods down further and access more nutrients from those foods. But our good gut flora also makes like B vitamins for us. They really do a lot of things to improve our immune system and allow our body to function the way that it's supposed to function. So this is a great way to benefit that whole system just by bringing real food into the system. So when we're looking at what is real food, we're looking at things like animal proteins. If a person is a vegan, this is one of the problems of being vegan, is because then when you're trying to get protein sources, you're eating these Frankenburgers and processed soy things that are creating a lot of trouble. So even if you feel it is important to be a vegan, and maybe you have like religious or spiritual beliefs that make you really want to be a vegan, then you want to do real food sources of protein. You don't want to be using Frankenburgers and all these soy things. So animal proteins are very important. Good fats. We don't want to use these processed seed oils. They're toxic. I know that in the 80s they told us this was way better than butter, but we know it's not true. If you're still living in the 80s, you want to get rid of your parachute pants, you want to stop breakdancing, and you want to move over to some better fats. You want to use saturated fats. Those are the fats that are really beneficial to us. Olive oil can be beneficial. You just don't want to cook with it because then it changes it into a different thing. So you want to have good fats, not these vegetable type oils. Real food means those vegetables are in there, fruits are in there, and we want to think about, do we want to eat organic or does that really matter? And there's studies that show that between the nutrient levels in an organic food and a commercially grown food, there's not really a difference, but it really depends on the farmer that's putting these things together and the soil that they're using as to the level of nutrients that are going to be in there. But even if the nutrient levels are the same, when you are eating organic food, you're removing another burden. all these pesticides, all these things that really can disrupt our gut flora. That can be a really big problem when we're creating digestive trouble just because we didn't buy an organic stalk of broccoli. So when you can do organic, you really want to. And another thing we want to think about is grains. And some people are going to say, hey, whole grains are a real food. I just don't view it that way. Most grains are a processed situation. They're not really made to eat. There is no situation in nature where you would grab a handful of wheat and eat it. Like, you just wouldn't do that. You really have to process these things into something different to make it to where it's palatable. Now, there are people who are saying, well, I'm just using ancient grains, I'm soaking them, I'm removing a lot of the problems that these grains can cause. And that gets into a fuzzy area where I believe that a lot of people can do those things and it's going to be okay. But some people need to do more. But keep in mind that if you're eating grains and a lot more of these real food choices, you're really moving in the right direction. You might not need to do everything right away. You might not need to remove all of these things right away, as long as you're removing a lot of these toxins and including more nutrient-dense foods. So give yourself a break, figure out what's right for you, figure out what you really need to achieve. How significant are the health issues that you're dealing with? If you're a type 2 diabetic and you're still going to eat bread, you're not going to get the results that you want to get. That's too many carbohydrates in the wrong type of form that you're putting into a body that's not processing carbohydrates correctly. So you have to look at your situation. I can't give an answer that's going to work for everybody. You got to dig into what's going on for you. But again, take some steps, start moving in the right direction. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about these steps. One thing that's going to be important that's going to upset some people, you have to do actual shopping. You have to go to a grocery store and buy these foods. You have to buy like actual ingredients from the store so that you can make this food. And there's a lot of meal service plans now, and some of them have actually good food that they cook for you and make it easier for you just to heat up. Now, there's options like that, but some of those things can be expensive. So you're probably going to have to do some actual shopping at the store. And one thing that's good to note, if this is new to you, this is new to, I'm going to eat real food, is shopping at the perimeter of the store is usually the best idea. If you go down the aisles in the middle, that's usually where all the processed junk is. So the more that you can shop in the perimeter, the more you're going to be seeing more real foods. And just kind of look at a gradual replacement. Again, we don't have to fix everything by Thursday. If tomorrow, if you can eat a meal that is just real food, well, that might be a lot better than all the popcorn and toaster pastries you've been eating lately. So get yourself a meal, something that you like, and you might have to test some things out. And I ate that and that was really gross. I ain't doing that again. I'm going to try something different. You have to work through to find some things that you like, and then just start adding to your arsenal. I like this meal. That's a good one. I'm going to have that again. And then tomorrow, I'm going to find something different. I'm going to try and mix things up. I don't want to eat the same thing every day, so I'm going to keep learning. You might need to look at some videos on how to cook. If you don't know how to cook, you're really going to have to be an adult and learn how to cook. You're going to have to cook for yourself unless you just have piles of money that you can hand to somebody else and have them do it for you. Most people are going to have to learn to cook, so that's okay. You want to learn some recipes so that you can find things that are delicious. You don't want to make it to where it tastes like cardboard. You're not going to sustain that. So learn how to cook and just find new meals. If every week you found a new meal, a few months down the road, now you have a real variety of things that you can cook, that you can make, and that you enjoy, and you don't need to eat all this junk. So a way to make this easier is through meal planning, to know what you're going to eat. Especially if I have a client that's trying to lose weight, I'm like, look, you need to know what you're going to eat tomorrow before tomorrow gets here. You really want to plan ahead. When you don't plan ahead, you get busy, life gets in the way, you get really hungry, and then bad choices come in. All of a sudden, golden grams in a taco shell is a really good idea because you got too hungry to think straight, and now you're just eating whatever you can. You really want to plan this out and know what you're going to be doing the next day before it gets there. And what can be really helpful is to just have like a cooking day. If you can just cook a bunch of these protein sources on one day, I like to cook like a bunch of chicken, or I'll make some steak, and I'll cook these things ahead of time so that they're ready to go in the refrigerator. And then I just add them to a salad, or I put it with these vegetables to make a meal. All of a sudden, I don't have to cook chicken every time I want to eat. It's already done. So if you can do this once or twice a week, it'll really set you up to make all of this a whole lot easier. Now let's think about some of the challenges that can come up because again, it's not going to be super easy. You're going to have to put effort into figuring this out. And one of the biggest challenges can be if you're dealing with any digestive symptoms at all. If you're dealing with digestive symptoms, you want to fix those. The good news is that you can. You can fix digestive problems, and those symptoms are a sign that digestion is not working correctly and you're not breaking down your food correctly. Now, what's important to understand is that processed junk is a lot easier to break down than a steak. It's a lot easier to break down than broccoli. A toaster pastry is practically broken down in the package. It's just chemicals and stuff that just breaks right down very easily. So if you're having digestive malfunctions, your body is going to want this junk because it's easier for the body to turn it into at least some type of fuel source. So when you start eating real food and you can't digest it, you're going to be miserable. It's not going to go well and you're going to gravitate right towards the junk again. So if you're having any type of digestive symptoms at all, my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, chapters 3 and 4 walk you through figuring out which aspects of digestion are not working correctly and what steps you can take to improve those. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'll put a link in the description below so you can get the whole thing totally for free and you can just jump to chapters 3 and 4 and figure out that process. But you're going to want to do that. So you see, this goes two ways here. So eating real food has the ability to improve your digestion, but if your digestion is shot and you're not breaking things down correctly, you're going to be too miserable to do that long enough to improve the digestion. It's going to be too slow. There's steps you can take to really speed that up. So do that because it's going to make it a whole lot easier. And that brings us to cravings too. A lot of people are eating all this junk because they're craving these things. And those cravings are about your body not getting what it needs to function correctly. And it's usually because you're not breaking down your food correctly. So we'll put a link in the description below for our video on how to improve cravings. You might need to take other steps depending on where your body chemistry is. You might have to look at some things, but you're going to want to take care of this or this is going to be too hard. There's no amount of willpower that's going to fix cravings if there are malfunctions creating those. So that's something that you want to fix, and it usually has to do with digestion. You're going to have to create some new habits. This cooking day, actually going to the store, planning things out. This is not going to happen instantly. You might have to get in the group. You might have to forget and say, oh yeah, I was supposed to do that. So that's going to take some learning to figure that out. Social situations, you're going to go out to friends. You're going to go out to kids' birthday parties. You have to try to figure out how to integrate this into what you're doing. I really like to see people test out going to eat out, but I want you to go to eat at a restaurant, maybe even by yourself, and figure out, okay, I'm going to do this in a healthy way. And figure out what you can eat at that restaurant that's going to go along with what you're trying to do. Every restaurant will allow you to eat well for the most part if you put effort into doing it. You might have to ask questions. You might have to say, hey, can I get this in a lettuce wrap instead of on this bun? Don't be afraid to ask. That's what the servers are there for. They're there to serve you. So that's a good way to test that out. Social situations. You know, if I'm going to a kid's birthday party, I'm eating before I go. I don't want to eat all the junk that they're going to have there. So maybe you get yourself to where you're not really hungry. Remember, if you get real hungry, bad decisions come in there. When you're going out with friends who want to do all this junk and all these things, you know, maybe you eat before you go. Maybe you might have to remove yourself from that. When I was really sick and first starting to learn all this stuff, I really couldn't eat anything that was processed because I would be wrecked for days. It would ruin me. So I just stopped going out altogether because I was tired of people saying, oh, come on, eat this, come on, do this. I needed to help my body heal. So I did what I needed to do that. Now I can go out with friends. If I go on vacation with my family, I can eat some junk and it doesn't make my body fall apart. I can recover from that now. I don't do it every day, but I can get away with it when the time is right. So figure out where you are and work with your body. Don't work against it and think that you're going to get the results. It's just not going to happen. And if you're really trying to do everything right and you go off track one day, it's okay. A lot of people take the viewpoint of, oh man, I had a cupcake today, so I might as well forget all this and I'll try again next year. Well, that's not how the body works. The body doesn't work a year at a time. Everything you eat counts. Everything you don't eat counts. All of that counts. So when you eat something wrong, just do the next right thing. thing. It doesn't matter what it is. Maybe you go shopping. Maybe you go and get some more food. Maybe that's the next right thing. Maybe you just go for a walk. Just do anything that puts you in the direction of what you're trying to achieve, and then you can do the next right thing after that, and all of a sudden you're right back on track. Don't go off track and just dump the whole thing and say, I'll try again some other time. Just get right back on. It's okay. You messed up. It's not a big deal. Just do what you can to get more on track so you're doing more of the right things. So I hope these steps help you understand that this is manageable. It can be done. Don't let it overwhelm you. Just start putting yourself in motion and start today. Do anything. Whether it's just I'm going to make a list of some foods that I might like. I don't even have to buy them today, but if I make that list, then I have started. Put yourself in motion so you can make this happen. Now, if you haven't seen it, jump over right now and check out that video on the effects of ultra-processed foods on our body so you can understand some of the issues these foods create. I can't wait to hear about your results.